Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Today I'd like to talk about Pride and Prejudice and Zombies and Lannisters. Oh my! Yes, the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies adaptation is moving along quite nicely. I would say much better than Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter ever did. And that film, of course, was never the hit that Hollywood and some fans hoped it would be. Yet it just simply did not have the cast that's coming together for Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. And the latest story is that they've signed two very big guns from Game of Thrones, Tywin Lannister, aka Charles Dance, and Cersei Lannister, aka Lena Headey. And I think both those actors are a great fit with a Pride and Prejudice adaptation, even if it does have zombies in it, and perhaps even more so as they have a big genre following at this point, thanks to Game of Thrones. Now, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies has a very nice setup, which I think is a better fit organically, folding in the horror elements into a classic story than Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter was. What basically happens in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is that you have the romance as is, complete with Mr. Darcy. However, in the background, there's this zombie war going on. And I think that fits quite nicely with British history. Not only a lot of wars have been fought in Britain, now world wars as well, and you see that in the background of a lot of classic British stories, but also a big history of colonization, going to new worlds, that adventurous spirit. And I think it totally makes sense that perhaps on one of those adventures, a zombie virus would be brought back. So I think it really does seem to fit with the source material in a great way, which I think is very exciting and compelling. So how is this cast coming together? Well, you have the two Lannisters, as I noted, but then also Lily James from Downton Abbey, and she's also the new Cinderella, is going to be our star. Mr. Darcy will be played by Sam Riley, who was Maleficent's crow henchman in the recent Angelina Jolie film. And then my favorite, Jack Houston, aka Richard Harrow from Boardwalk Empire, is going to be playing a zombie hunter and rival for the affections against Mr. Darcy. So I think this sounds like a great cast and something very exciting with the way it's coming together. And if you would like kind of like an appetizer, this reminded me of a comic book that came out, I'd say one or maybe two or 3 years ago actually at this point, called The New Deadwardians from Vertigo. Vertigo has been dying a slow death ever since its editor, Karen Berger, left, and they kind of, made the imprint part of DC internally instead of kind of being its own shingle, because the suits were like, these deals that we're signing over here at Vertigo are ridiculous. We're giving the rights to the creators? That's silly. So Karen Berger was supposed to go set up her own shop somewhere. That has yet to happen. You keep hearing rumors about it. But anyway, during her run, Vertigo had some of the best comics put out. And they put out, and as they tried to maintain the brand, The New Deadwardians was one of the titles they put out, and it was quite good. It's written by Dan Abnett, who often writes with Andy Lanning. They did a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy work, actually, a lot of Marvel cosmic writing, a lot of writing for Marvel in general, but they're very good. But this is Dan Abnett on his own, and it's called, again, The New Deadwardians, and it has zombies in Edwardian England. Now, that's a whole century later than Pride and Prejudice, which takes place like the early 1800s, and this Edwardian era is the beginning of the 1900s, but still, I think you can see how well the horror elements mix in with historical British elements. Very good series, and as I said, a nice little appetizer as you get ready for Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day, talk about someone coming back from the dead, is Hawkeye, and Jeremy Renner dropping quite a number of hints of where we might be seeing him after the Avengers Age of Ultron. And not only is Jeremy Renner dropping these hints, but the directors of Captain America 3, the Russo Brothers, have also noted that Hawkeye is very likely going to be in that film. And I think that's very interesting. Now, the way Jeremy Renner brought it up is he's been doing a lot of press for Kill the Messenger that's coming up. And, of course, everybody wants to know about the big franchises he's involved in, like the next Bourne film that he's supposed to make, and he's also on next Mission Impossible, and, of course, his Marvel work. And they were asking if he'd ever get a solo film. And Jeremy Renner said, I'm happy to be part of an ensemble, and I might be part of an ensemble coming up very soon, for instance, like Cap 3. And then he made it quite clear that he was dropping a serious hint. Now, I think that's interesting. I mean, a lot of people were wondering where Hawkeye's been. I've been wondering where Hawkeye's been. Part of me feels it was a little bit of a punishment, maybe, for his being so vocal about not being happy with his screen time, the amount of screen time he had in the first Avengers film. And also maybe he was just busy. He clearly has a lot to do. But he doesn't seem to be quite as busy anymore, as he really seems to be becoming more and more a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, to involve him in Cap 3 makes sense because Cap's so heavily involved in S.H.I.E.L.D. It's almost to the point where Cap movies are S.H.I.E.L.D. movies. And I'm not complaining. I really liked Captain America the Winter Soldier quite a bit. It is to date still my favorite movie of the year. Although, so many great movies coming out for awards season, and also the holiday blockbuster season. But still, right now, Cap's got that top spot, and I really like the political thriller aspects to it. And of course, Hawkeye, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., just like Black Widow. They're contemporaries. But my question is, if Hawkeye's going to show up in any substantial or way that's worth mentioning or hinting at in Captain America 3, who's not going to show up? Because the cast was pretty crowded as is, and I think they had just enough cast members to make sure everybody got a nice moment in the film. But I mean, Nick Fury's off the board, as many of you have pointed out, so maybe that's going to be the person they take out. Is Black Widow, maybe they don't want to make it seem like Cap's movies are actually Black Widow's movies. So the way to fix that is to rotate his supporting cast to make sure that Cap is the one who stays the main attraction. So maybe Black Widow will go show up in somebody else's movie. But then who would be their female character in Cap 3? Would Sharon Carter find her role increased? And we saw her just briefly as kind of like the nurse next door, Big Bang Theory style, protecting Cap. Maybe seeing her become Agent 13 as she's meant to be. And then also maybe the Red Skull's daughter Sin will show up. I was hoping that that actually Sharon Carter would be Sin, maybe. But we'll see. So that's how you could get a female character into the mix and still and get rid of Black Widow for a while, because I think she was a very big part of that movie. And yes, if I were Marvel, I would be somewhat concerned that she was overshadowing Captain America in his own film. Then also Falcon, are they going to bench him? I doubt it, considering he was so popular, and he's even a pick that people would like to see take over for Cap eventually. And he's going to be doing so in the comics, at least for a brief period. We'll see how long that lasts. And then also the Winter Soldier. Will the Winter Soldier fade back into the shadows to emerge another day, perhaps on his own TV series? Or, were you expecting him to step up and have more adventures with Cap and kind of like fight side by side? Although they don't even really fight side by side in the comics. I don't think Bucky can be a sidekick anymore, so he really goes off and largely has his own adventures. Or right now his comic book is largely a flashback. A very good flashback. The new, the Marvel Now reboot of The Winter Soldier I thought was pretty darn good, although he wasn't the star of his own comic, so you can argue either way, I guess. So I'm curious to what you guys think. Do you like the idea of Hawkeye being in Captain America 3? Who would you be okay letting go to give some room for Hawkeye? And then also, do you want a solo Hawkeye pick, or do you agree with Jeremy Renner that being a part of an ensemble is just fine? And also, do you think they need to rotate these cast members around behind Cap to make sure it's clear that his movies are his movies? All right, so let's go on to the third story of the day. Justin Lin. That's the big person I want to talk about, because we're talking about True Detective. And this folds in nicely with the Bourne film, because Jeremy Renner is waiting to film that. And Justin Lin, he left the Fast and Furious films to try and, I think, make more of a name for himself as just more than just the Fast and Furious guy. Although, not a bad guy to be. He really elevated that franchise to incredible heights. But now, of course, James Wan is taking over, and Justin Lin was supposed to do the next Bourne film with Jeremy Renner. However, you've heard the rumblings that Matt Damon and Paul Greengrass want to come back in, and it hasn't been settled yet as to whether or not their film will come first or the Lin and Renner film. So I think he's found himself in a little bit of a problem area, and that he is not quite sure what to do. He was supposed to jump right into Bourne, not happening. He's off the Fast and Furious franchise, he's been replaced. What's he going to do? He's also slated to go to China, of course, as I previously reported, to do this Shaolin Temple 3D remake, which is supposed to be shot in English and Chinese, so that it can be a global film. And it's being produced largely out of China. So that's very interesting that Lin's going to go into that region, and you're going to start to see Hollywood talent going way across the pond, or the other pond, which, as I've said many times, I think is fascinating. So what's Lin going to do? Well, it turns out he's going to direct just 2 episodes of the new season of True Detective, which I find to be the most interesting bit of news that HBO announced earlier this week. They announced 2 of the cast members, which we'll get to in a moment, but Justin Lin taking over I think is very interesting. And I don't know how good a match he is. On one hand, I think it's great for his profile and to just have him direct something, get him back on the board, get him back in the industry trades, because right now he's just burning time and he's not making headlines. So I think this is a great thing for him to be involved with. However, a big part of the first True Detective was its heavy stylization from Cary Fukunaga. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He won an Emmy for his directing. Very talented, but now he wants to go on and make feature films. He's going to be doing the new Idris Elba film, for instance, that we recently discussed over in the No Good Deed review about an African warlord who drafts young boys against their will to fight in his army. So he wants to go back to movies after, trying to do it with Jane Eyre and such, and, he took a little break to recharge with True Detective quite nicely. But he was very stylized, and he shot the entire 8-episode season. Now, if Justin Lin's only going to do 2, how can they hope to maintain a style and a tone throughout those 8 episodes? It concerns me. Also, Justin Lin, quite frankly, isn't a stylized director, and I think that heavy stylization, again, was a big part of the persona of True Detective and what made it stand out from all the other cable dramas that are quite competitive. There's a lot of good TV on. So the actors they've confirmed are Colin Farrell. He is confirmed. He's going to play a police officer or a detective who's caught between a corrupt department and the mob who owns him, which I have to say sounds like every Colin Farrell role ever, but I'm rooting for him. I like him a lot. Also, Vince Vaughn, he's going to be one of the main characters playing a career criminal trying to go legit with this high-speed railway transportation system in California, but then there's a murder in his new business organization. That's his old self would call it, but his new business, there's a murder, and things kind of start to threaten to unravel. So it sounds pretty interesting to me. As I said many times before, I think this is going to really borrow heavily from Chinatown. We'll see how effective that is. There's 2 more cast members to go, another male cast member and a female cast member. Both will be police officers. Or in the police department, and that's 4 main characters. I think that 2 was a good choice for the first True Detective, and I'm curious to see how 4 will work out. But, Nick Pizzolatto, very talented writer-producer, even though he has been accused of plagiarism, but I think I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm interested to see it. But this, I like the Chinatown approach. I like moving to California. I like Vince Vaughn. I like Colin Farrell. I think they're both very much in the Matthew McConaughey vein of having a certain level of notoriety and popularity and needing to be rehabilitated. I think they both fit that mold perfectly. Yet the Justin Lin only being on for 2 episodes, Justin Lin himself, and then the expanded cast gives me some cause for concern. So I'm curious to what you guys think. Will True Detective continue to be such a great television series that it exists somewhere between TV and film, as I feel the first one did, and so many feel it did? All right, so let's get on to the viewer question of the day, which also has to do with television to some degree. This is from Enna Mavix, and Enna Mavix says, "Hi Grace, I have been watching your shows ever since I can remember from the Indie Mogul days." Thank you, Enna Mavix. That's awesome. I really appreciate that you've continued to enjoy the show and stuck with it. So he continues saying, "Your morning movie news is my evening ritual before going to sleep, since I am here in the Philippines." Hello, Philippines. Have a good night, Enna Mavix, after you watch this episode. And he says, "Right now I'm a bit confused and would love to hear you answer my question, hopefully. So here's my question. Can you enlighten me on how the rights to a property works? If Warner Brothers owns the DC Cinematic Universe and all of its characters, can you explain why Fox is showing Gotham on television, or the CW showing Arrow and Flash? More power to the informative show." Lots of smiley faces. Oh, that's great. And I think the reason I picked this is not only because we talked about Gotham yesterday, I reviewed it, but also I think it's interesting to be reminded for us here living in the United States that our television, business and industry might be somewhat confusing to those who don't live here and watch these shows on their own, separated from all that the business aspects of ownership, etc. So let me explain. All right, so let's take Warner Brothers as our example. Warner Brothers is a big company. It's part of Time Warner, and they own many, many things. They own many cable networks, television network. They own many properties like DC Comics, and they also produce things across the board. They make movies, but they also have their own television production company. They make many television shows that appear on many networks. Now, the reason that the CW gets so many of the DC shows is that Warner Brothers does happen to own half of that network. The other half is owned by CBS. So that's why I think that you see a number of their comic book shows going there, like Arrow and The Flash. But then also they own a lot of cable networks like TNT, and that's one of the reasons that you're seeing the Titans show go there. They also own Cartoon Network, which was why you saw the Warner Brothers animation shows go over there, the DC animation shows. It's a very big empire, huge. But still, yes, Gotham is airing on Fox. Why is that? Well, that's the way pilot season works. Warner Brothers will come up with an idea for a television show, and they go, well, let's make a show about Jim Gordon. It's a prequel show. It's in Gotham. It's going to be awesome. So they put the show together, and I think they envision it as something a little bit more than Arrow and The Flash, which is why they didn't just put it immediately on the CW. I think they were like, I think we can go a little bigger with this. I think we'd like to see it on a major network. The CW is kind of a secondary network when it comes to network television. There's CBS here, ABC, NBC, and Fox. Those are basically your networks. And I think they wanted to see it go there. Or maybe even they were thinking, I would think maybe they would love to see it go on a cable network, but considering the way the show developed to be so networky, I would imagine maybe they always envisioned it going on a network. So they pitch it around, they make a pilot, they discuss it, they go to all the different networks. Sometimes the deal is closed before the pilot's even shot, but then this show, it could have gone to any of the networks. For instance, Constantine is over on NBC. Also a DC property. But Fox is the one who decided to pick it up. I think it actually happens to be a good match with Fox, and Fox is very good at launching these kinds of shows. Much better than NBC, by the way. For instance, you can think of 24. The reincarnation of 24 didn't work out so well, but they've had some very popular shows. House, very popular. Fox can build buzz. All the more impressive because while all the other networks have a 3-hour programming block, I believe Fox really only has the 8 and 9 o'clock hour, and then they usually run news at 10. So they have a little bit of a different setup than your major networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC. So just a little bit of a crash course, that's the term, a crash course on network television here in the United States. But Warner Brothers TV, they want their shows to get out there. They can't possibly air them all in the CW, and they don't want to because the CW has a very distinct reputation and image with the consumer audience. So they want to go and they place the shows at different places where it's a good fit, and that's why when you watch a television show, look for the logos at the end. And if you see Warner Brothers come up, you're watching a Warner Brothers television show. And of course, it all benefits them anyway because it feeds into the popularity of the characters, and Warner Brothers has a hit show that they can merchandise, etc., sell to syndication. That's another big thing, a big source of revenue for TV. That's why even when a show is only hanging on in the ratings, it will still stick around because once they get to a certain number of episodes, they qualify for syndication, where a secondary network buys the rights and airs them again and again and again at odd hours. It's a huge way to make money. It's actually the way most TV people make the big bucks. And for so long, Seinfeld people are still making money. Friends people still getting paychecks thanks to syndication, which is why when they reach that certain episode, a show will often throw a party because they know they're going to get so much money. And so Warner Brothers, of course, looks to make revenue that way. They'd love Gotham to air a certain amount of times so that it becomes a popular show. It's something people want to buy on DVD, for instance. It's a huge potential revenue earner, even if it isn't on their own network. So I hope that clarifies things for you a little bit, Animavics. And also, don't get too married to this whole TV system anyway, because I think with Netflix and on-demand and DVRs and just the digital revolution in general, I think this whole system is slowly disappearing and dissolving anyway. All right, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.